Hello, everybody, and welcome. Good to see all of your faces. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to let Jen kick us off.
I'll be brief. Hi, everybody. Also nice to see your faces and to see the great lineup for presentations today. Particularly excited about this one because it's so complementary, I think, to the rest of the work of the network. We're focused on helping government work for all people and by all people. And, while our work here in the office is around a set of services that doesn't touch housing, it really is so complementary to that work. So it's so wonderful to see all the ways that folks in Brigades are helping people with this service that's often a service that other people we're helping with also need. And I'm just excited about it because I love seeing all these, you see the fabric of the network where everyone's touching these same issues, but dealing with them in different ways, addressing them in different ways, because that means that we all have different, though complementary learnings. And that's what I think we will see today, is you'll all be asking each other lots of great questions about what you've learned in trying to help people in your communities with housing. So why don't you guys take it away?
Thanks so much, Jen. That's great. Yeah, so thank you so much to everybody who's joining us right now. We're really looking forward to this opportunity to share great work that's been going on in the network. As Jen alluded to, there's so many great projects that I think are very impactful in your individual communities. And I hope that this is a great opportunity for everybody on this call and everybody that is able to watch the video to learn from the work that you've done in your own communities. Just to go through a few housekeeping things, we have kind of changed a few of the permissions on our Zoom webinars just for safety and security reasons. So everybody should be promoted to a panelist on here on Zoom, and that means that you are able to turn your video on and show your face, but we have disabled the fact that folks can share their screen. So unless you are a presenter, presenters have been made co-hosts, and so you are therefore allowed to share your screen, but everybody else is not able to share their screen. And we'll also be locking this webinar 30 minutes into the session, just so we don't get random people coming in. And to start us off, I'd love to do a round robin, how we usually kind of kick things off, just so everybody knows everyone else's faces. And so if you can say your name, what brigade you're associated with, and what did you want to be when you were 5 years old, 5 or 6 years old, a little kid. And I have Amy, you go up first, please.
Sure, I'm Amy Cantrell. I'm with Beloved in Asheville, North Carolina. And my 5-year-old dream was to be an ice cream truck driver. And so sometimes I get to serve ice cream out on these streets when it gets really hot. So dreams come true.
Oh, that's awesome.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, good to see you again.
See you too.
Thanks. Tom, you're up next.
Hey everyone, I'm Tom. I'm at Code for America. I'm the developer evangelist on the network team. It's good to see many of you guys again digitally here. I think I wanted to be an astronaut when I grew up. Pretty classic, but just something about going to space. Just really exciting.
Cool, thank you. Mike, we have you up next.
Mike Comner. I'm with Code for Boulder. And when I was 5, I wanted to run my dad's candy store.
You were a lucky kid.
Well, you have no idea.
Thanks so much. Julie, you're up next.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. I'm Julie, and I'm with Code for San Jose. And I think when I was 5, I wanted to be a nun because I didn't want to be around boys at all. I think when I'm muted, I can't hear anybody else.
Oh, so you can't hear, can you hear me right
Well,
now?
I can hear you now. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, no worries. As long as there's no background noise, I think that should be fine.
We were laughing.
I know. I saw you laugh, but it was silence. It threw me off.
Oh, I had my computer on mute. That's probably why.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Julie. Eric, you're up next.
Eric Jackson with Code for Asheville. And unfortunately, I think the only thing I wanted when I was 5 was to be grown up. And then that happened. And I've been kind of pursuing childhood ever since. But thanks.
Cool, thanks. Chris, you're up next. And you're muted.
Hi, I am Chris Matthews. I am from Open Raleigh and the Open NC Collaborative. And when I was 5, I wanted to be president of the United States. Of course, the year after that, Watergate happened. So that changed my plans.
Awesome, thanks. Yanin, you're up next.
Hi everyone, my name is Yanyin Chai. I'm with Code for San Jose. I'm one of the co-captains. When I was 5, I wanted to be a teacher. I found teachers to be really inspiring and I always wanted to help in the classroom.
Awesome, thank you. David, you're up next.
Hi, I'm David, Code for Fort Collins. I am struggling to remember what I wanted to be when I was 5. President sounds pretty accurate, though. We'll go with that. Someone important.
Awesome, thanks. Rohan.
Can everyone hear me? Sorry, my computer is kind of laggy.
Yeah.
But hey, I'm Rohan. I'm from. Okay, cool. I'm Rohan. I'm from Open Austin, working on affordable housing with a new fellowship program. And when I was 5, I wanted to be a Jedi, and I don't know. I'm still holding out on that dream, but have yet to find the lightsaber.
Cool, thank you.
Don't give up.
Mike, you're up next. Mike Brown.
Hey everyone, my name is Mike Brown. I'm starting the brigade here in Buffalo, New York, and throughout like most of my childhood, I was obsessed with Thomas the Tank Engine. So I totally wanted to be a train conductor when I was 5.
Love it. Awesome. Matt, you're up next.
Hi everyone. My name is Matt, and I am one of the brigade leaders at Code for Boston. And oh man, when I was 5, I definitely wanted to be an astronaut. It just seemed very fun to sort of be out in space and float around. Haven't gotten to do that yet, but you know, I think the future keeps coming at me, so maybe one day.
Cool, thanks. Jim, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Jim McManus, and I'm with Code for Durham. And when I was 5, I wanted to be a doctor that drove a truck and chewed gum.
Awesome, thanks. Sabra, we have you up next. And you're on mute right now, by the way.
Okay, I'm Sabrina Raven with Code for Asheville and Beloved Asheville. I don't actually remember this, but my baby book says I wanted to be an astronaut.
Awesome, thanks. Sasha, we have you up next. Okay, well, let us know if you're able to tune in. Brittany Lyons, we have you up next.
Hi, I'm Brittany. I'm working with Rohan in the Code for Austin for the fellowship. And when I was 5, I wanted to be an actress because I really liked all of the movies. So.
Great, thanks. Brandon, I think we have you up last.
Yo, hi, I'm Brandon Miner. I'm captain of Code for Boulder. And when I was 5, I wanted to be a firefighter, I think, to be completely honest. So pretty generic.
Awesome, thanks. Hi everyone, my name's Veronica, and when I was 5, I was in love with SeaWorld and wanted to be Shamu's trainer. Now, obviously, the poor whales were going through, but that's what I wanted to do at the time. Okay, awesome. Well, I'd like to start off by doing a quick showcase from Tom for a new part of our website that will be relevant to this workshop in the next few days. So I'll hand it over.
Hey everyone. Oh, okay. How's everyone doing? I am going to share my screen really quick. I just want to show you, I'll take a couple minutes to show you a really exciting new feature that we just launched on the Brigade website. This was in collaboration with some other engineers here. We launched the project showcase just an hour ago. So go check it out on the Brigade website at brigade.codeforamerica.org/showcase. It's in the top page here. The idea here is to create a more digestible list of projects rather than the previous sort of project finding functionality. Just displayed a giant list of projects from all over the place, including things that weren't Brigades, all over the world. Sometimes you would, log in and see something in Spanish or Mandarin or some language you probably don't speak. We tried to simplify it, highlight the best projects that we could find, and definitely this is always going to be a work in progress. Right now it's just manually curated. We're going to look forward to incorporating feedback into how we can improve this. The old project search function is here. So it's not gone, it's just sort of less prominent now. And the new functionality is grouped by category. We list some projects. We take note of the different forks of each project and link to code and project URLs, live project URLs that you can go to easily. And so if you have nominations for projects that you think should be on this page, let us know. We're working to develop criteria for how we choose to highlight which projects. And going forward, I think we'll be working with the presenters today in the housing projects so that we can get some of those on here, because housing projects are such a common topic across all of our cities. So the idea would be that you can send your Brigade volunteers to this page for inspiration of projects that they can adapt and deploy in your Brigade. So I think I've got to the bottom of it now. And yeah, so go check it out, send it out to your Brigades, use it as a resource, and definitely give us your feedback on how we can keep improving it. So thank you guys.
Cool, thanks so much, Tom. And so we'll be adding more projects in a housing section to this as well, as Tom mentioned. Okay, perfect. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first set of presenters, Yanyin and Julie will be presenting from Code for San Jose about their Renters' Rights Guide. So you should be able to take it away.
Can you see my screen? Cool. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Yanyin Chai, and I'm one of the co-captains of Code for San Jose, also the project lead for the San Jose Renters' Rights Guide. And I'll be presenting with Julie Kim today. Julie is also part of our leadership team and also the UX lead for this project. So why Renters' Rights Guide? We decided to pursue this project. We started about a year ago because we really wanted to build something that would help San Jose renters understand all of the new tenant protection laws that were being passed by the city of San Jose over the last couple of years. And also currently the online resources are really difficult to understand and often require the person to navigate through different websites or different web pages to find information or answer their questions about renters' rights policies. So our timeline kind of looks like this. We started last spring, around last May, and we approached it with really an iterative process where we did a lot of user research, policy research, and stakeholder research. And then using that research, we have a process where we design prototypes and do a lot of user testing, and then try to build the features through web development. And then we pretty much repeat that process and incorporate the user feedback that we get. Along the way, we were awarded a couple of micro grants, which have really helped with engaging volunteers. And since last year, we've engaged 21 volunteers who have helped with everything from the web development to design or conducting the user testing. I'm going to give you a quick demo of the website, what it currently looks like. In a second, once it works. Okay, so this is what it looks like right now. As a renter, you might be trying to figure out what to do if you're facing eviction, or how to handle a rent increase, or maybe you're facing housing discrimination. And one of the very common use cases we find is you have a rent increase and you can't afford it. So one of the local ordinances covers a particular group of tenants, and you can figure out, okay, are you covered by this renters' rights policy? And after that, we have this rent increase calculator where you can pretty much enter your rent and figure out how much your rent has increased. So that's what the project looks like right now. We use a number of different free software, Heroku, Rails, and React to build the web development side, and we use Figma and Adobe XD to do the design, prototypes, and wireframes.
So we used a hybrid approach for user research because of time and budget constraints. So we would, one strategy we combine user interviews with user test sessions. So we interviewed at least 30 different individuals who fulfilled our criteria, low to moderate income renters in San Jose. We found that they were most likely to use an Android mobile device. They had no patience for long blocks of policy and legal writing that potentially might not even apply to their situation. And then our target user often doesn't really trust the government because of past experience, and is more likely to seek help from nonprofits. Next screen. So we interviewed quite a few different local nonprofits that deal with housing and tenant rights issues in San Jose. We also talked with government agencies like the Housing Department in San Jose and the Office of Supportive Housing within the County of Santa Clara. So through building these stakeholder relationships, we were able to gain access to a couple different resources. One, we were able to obtain data from the county assessor's office with help from the mayor's office. This data normally costs $40,000. We got it for free. We're also awarded the 2 micro grants, one from the city of San Jose, the mayor's office, and the Awesome Foundation. So that was a total of $2,000. And then our stakeholders were also able to connect us with user testers. So our next steps are continuing with the user research and trying to better understand very complicated local, state, and federal tenant protection policies. We also want to make the app more inclusive by translating it into Spanish and Vietnamese. And then we want to enhance usability by making the app more interactive, using more graphics, and then integrating the new data we acquired, and then doing outreach with the community so that more renters know and can benefit from our project. Did anyone have any questions?
Hey, it's Rohan here. I have a quick question on this. This looks really awesome. I am curious, how how are you able to get the current state of the app or the tool into your users' hands at the right time? Like, what is the process by which like the users were like either funneled to your application or made aware that this tool exists for them to use?
So our website's actually listed on the City of San Jose's resources in their guidebook and also on their websites. And through the relationships we formed with the various nonprofits that are engaging tenants, they said that they would help to spread the word about it. So I think that's primarily how people are finding out about our resource. We also do some social media outreach. And those are kind of the ways I think people are finding our website.
Are there some channels that have been more useful than others in that regard, in terms of the traffic?
We haven't really done the analysis of that, so I don't think we can answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This is David. I'm just curious how you conducted and found the 30 interview participants. That seems really impressive and smart to me. I'm just curious where you found them. Was it like through another organization or just go out on the street? How did that look?
It was both. At some point when we had absolutely no budget, we went to the library and we started doing guerrilla interviews. And people would actually do it for Snickers bars. Like, people were really helpful. But yeah, I've used Craigslist, Facebook groups, friends of friends.
How formalized was that interview? Did you have like a standard question set, or it was just kind of casual?
I would create like a research plan and I would write a script, but the interview itself would be sort of semi-structured, so it was a little more organic. I would have a script ready, but then it could easily veer off into different topics.
Cool.
Hey, this is Mike Brown. I just had a quick question about what specifically kind of data that you received from the mayor's office?
We got some housing data, which we hope to use to figure out who might be covered by the renters' rights policies.
Mm-hmm.
So just like data about each, basically every address in San Jose, and information that might fit the criteria that the renters' rights policies apply to.
So how do you make use of that data in the app?
Well, we're working on it right now, but basically we need to parse out that spreadsheet. It's a spreadsheet, and basically turn that information into some sort of like upload that information into our database and probably clean it up a bit so that we can apply some formulas. And on the user side, we're hoping that it would be as simple as someone entering in their address, and then it would cross-reference our database and it would tell them, hey, it looks like you are covered, or maybe you're not, but here are sources you can check out.
Okay, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, perfect. Well, if you have anything else, please put it in the chat and we can address it a little later. Thank you so much, Janine and Julie, for that great presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So up next, we have Code for Asheville and Beloved Asheville. So Amy Cantrell and Eric Jackson, you are up next to present.
Okay, let me just go ahead and share the screen.
Perfect.
There you go. Is everybody able to see?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. So again, I'm Eric Jackson with Code for Asheville, and Amy Cantrell and I are going to be co-presenting this. And I think just to start this out, a really important part of how we got to these projects and a lot of our other projects was a strategy change that we made about 3 years ago, where we realized that we were a bunch of people sitting in a room and trying to figure out what to do, and weren't really able to generate projects that were having much impact. And we had the idea that we would just stop, we canceled all our meetings and just started going out and joining other groups instead. And the result of that was that we have, over the last few years, forged pretty strong connections with a number of local community groups. We started with a homeless coalition, and that led us into Beloved, Asheville, which is kind of the highlight tonight, as well as Christiana Tugman, who we did the reentry with. And then we've also since connected with the NAACP and Black Lives Matter here. And as a result, pretty much every project we've done since then has originated from those partners. So one of the major partners and one of the first partners was Beloved. And let me just turn it over to Amy to talk about that.
Well, hey folks, I'm Amy Cantrell, and I'm a pastor turned community organizer. I've worked particularly on the streets with folks for about 25 years, and on 2 blocks in Asheville for about 15 years, building community, particularly around creating love and justice in very real ways by connecting people personally, and also doing systemic change work from the ground up. And so I can't tell you what a watershed moment that was. The day I was at the Homeless Coalition meeting, and folks walked in and Code for America track jackets, pulling off their sunglasses, and I thought, who are these cats and what are they here for? And it was a really powerful moment to hear them say, like, we have all these gifts and skills and we want to put them to use for the community. And I was so excited because we had projects that we dreamed of and were needing some tech skills to wed to that, to make those projects happen. And so I talked to them, and the rest is sort of history, as I proposed like 10 different projects. And so we kind of went from there.
So today we want to talk about 3 of them. And I'm going to, mostly it's going to be Amy talking. One thing I want to point out, so on each of these, we'll talk a little bit about who was involved. Code for Asheville has pretty much kind of taken the tack of doing things that don't cost anything. So that none of these have a budget. It's all either donations in kind or people putting in their time. I would also say at the same time that at least a couple of these have been very costly, not in dollars, but in time, and sometimes in kind of having to walk into some hard things. So the first one that we kicked off, and it is sort of what Sabra and I talked about on the main stage, but from a different perspective, let me turn it over to Amy to talk about Housing Not Handcuffs.
So one of the things that we have been engaged in is some community work around just creating space for folks to get engaged in the work of really raising their voices around government decisions that are being made about their community. And so we have a container called Homeless Voice, and those folks began to tell stories that I had heard for 15 years about how, it was very, very difficult to avoid arrest or citation when one was on the streets. And I had often been really curious, as had others, about what the numbers said about this, because the amount of stories were really overwhelming. And our town is very small, and we would see this everywhere, where we'd see 5 police officers stopping a homeless person for just not being somewhere that somebody didn't want them to be. And so I had gone in to try to get that information, and was told that we don't keep information like that. And I was real clear that we could probably pull it by address, given that most of our folks use the same addresses. And again, had walls put up. And so that was the first project that I was really interested in, was could we get this data? And so we were able to get the data. And so we went back over the course of 10 years. And what we saw was an overwhelming amount of trespass tickets and other things. But about almost 70% of all trespass tickets in our city go to one of those addresses. And so we began to work through the process of how do we shift public policy around this. There were tense moments, as Eric said, and a lot of time put in at community meetings and inviting city council people to hear the stories behind the data. You'll see a picture here of our public release of that data. And we did that in a downtown park that lots of folks who are on the street call that sort of one of the places that feels like home to them, and it's called Pritchard Park. And so we released that data to the public, and then we're invited to come to the city's public safety committee meeting to present. And so we went from there. So about 2 years later, you heard the presentation at the conference from Eric and Sabra. And so I'm happy to report that since then, we've had some pretty big policy shifts. One of those things was that in the budget that was just passed, we were able to get overnight public restroom hours. It's something that we fought for because we saw citations for public urination in our data set, many over the years. And we're working with the city right now to see if maybe some folks from Beloved who are part of our community might manage that restroom. So that was one of the shifts that's just happened. A second shift that has just happened is around that trespass citation or arrest. And that is the city is doing a pilot project right now where they're going to send out firefighters, dispatch them as opposed to police officers when there's a time when a homeless person might be trespassing, and do a wellness check on those folks and then ask them to move somewhere else. And so we feel like that is a sea change victory in terms of this. And now we're beginning to say, what does this mean and how can we hold accountability? But that's some of the things that have come out of this Housing Not Handcuffs project.
And just to add, one of the things that Amy forgot to mention is shortly after the summit, we also had a change around consent searches, which kind of came out of the discussions of traffic stuff, but actually also applies to people who are stopped and having their backpacks searched as well.
Yes. So we had told many city council people stories about folks being told, let me search your bag or I'm taking you to jail. And so this is a wonderful project where Code for Asheville and NAACP and BLOVE were sort of partnering together with lots of community groups. And we like to collaborate. So we do a lot of collaborating with NAACP. And so it was a wonderful way to all kind of come together and say, these are common issues that may look a little bit different depending on a particular population. And so that's another huge victory that has just come about.
So the second project that started roughly the same time period was the Beloved Computer Lab. Amy, you want to talk about that one and why?
Absolutely, and Sabra is on this webinar as well. And one of the things that she and I talked for years about was just the lack of access to technology. And in fact, I remember Sabra talking about this at a homeless coalition way back, is that folks have very limited access to computers and to upgraded computers with really good software on them and with the latitude to be able to do the things that they really wanted to do. Either folks have to have a library card and are timed out of a computer after an hour at the library, or they mostly had computer access for job search at the Employment Security Commission. So that was the only thing that folks could do on those computers, and those also had very limited access. And so we realized that there was a need for a computer lab and an internet lounge where people could use the tools in whatever way that they wanted to. And folks have used these tools in various capacities, and so you'll see some wonderful pictures of folks getting on there. We had somebody that liked to do photography, and so they would use the computer lab in that way. We had folks filing for their FAFSA financial aid to go back to college. We've had folks, we had somebody that's writing a novel, and so he's edited that, folks connecting with family. We had somebody come up in the yard one day and he said, I need an email address to apply for a job and I don't even know how to get one. And we said, come on in. And so it's really accessible. It's just in a corner of the living room. And so it's very inviting for folks. And people can hop on by themselves anytime that they want to, or if they need somebody to sit down with them and walk them through something, somebody's here to do that. And then we have Jim and Sabra who are here to really offer technical assistance and training. So you see Jim training one of our folks to do updates on the computers. And they've also looked at, sometimes we've gotten individual laptops donated that we're able to give away. And so doing training or troubleshooting of those has also been a part of this computer lab. But it's a really incredible gift to the community. And we're hoping to really expand this model and offer it in more ways and more places.
Cool. And finally, you know, one of the things that it seems, one of the themes through all of this, I mean, from a technical standpoint, pretty much everything we've done here is really simple. It's gathering some old laptops and kind of refurbishing and, you know, just doing a public records request and doing some simple data analysis. And the last one is in that vein, you know, just really helping over the last couple of years, helping Beloved rethink and update its website. So, Amy?
Yes, I think one of the things you're pointing to is power and access, you know, and I think having a technical background and even doing those simple public records requests, where somebody like me was told, we don't keep that data. And that's really harder to tell somebody with technical background that says, I'm sure you keep that data and we want access to it as members of the public. Another real big change for me over the time that I've been doing this work, when I first came to Asheville, the big attractor for me, even before I was able to share space through Beloved, was that I had a flip phone, and I would go to the park and let people use my flip phone, and that was huge in people's worlds. Now we're in a time where lots of folks, even on the streets, have access to phones that can pick up Wi-Fi hotspots, and so we have people messaging us via Wi-Fi and things like that, and so we're able oftentimes at 10 o'clock at night to respond to requests for help and assistance. And so one of the things that we realized was that our website was a real tool that we needed to update and really make it a mutual tool and a two-way street, so that we were not only conveying sort of our static information, but also sort of real-time information through our social media on our website, and then being able to integrate tools where we could hear from people that had needs, or we could interact with volunteers, or be able to send out a call for action. And so it's really exciting to be able to say, how can we use our website as a tool to reach all sorts of people and bring the community together around our mission, which is ending homelessness, racism, and poverty from the ground up through empowerment and community. So we're really grateful for this partnership with Code for Asheville, and I think it speaks to a lot of, I think what's magical is when everybody brings the gifts that they have. We can do really powerful work together that changes policies and changes all of our lives.
And I think from the Code for Asheville side, you know, this has very, very much been a two-way street, because one of the things, the most important thing we've gained is that when people show up, we're able to point to active projects that are having a significant and very real impact on the community. And that is, you know, the best recruitment tool anybody could ever hope for. So, and we're 3 projects down Amy's list. I don't know what the other projects are, but I am sure we will hear. But with that, we will we'll end this, and happy to take any questions. No questions?
I have a question. What are the hours for that homeless computer lab, and how are you able to maintain them? And I wanted to know more about the venue as well. I think it's an amazing idea. I'm curious about how you were able to accomplish it.
Awesome, absolutely. So we are housed in a community house. So some of us live here by intention as an intentional community. We're 100% volunteer powered, and so our core team, who lives in the house, sort of maintains the space and coordinates all the other volunteers that come. So we have volunteers from the street and volunteers from all over the community that come together here and do work in our community space. So the lab right now is in our community space, and we are actually getting ready to expand to a new space downtown. And so that'll give more opportunity actually for folks to come and use that. But the space is really accessible for folks to come in and connect with us. And because we live here, then we have real extended hours, which is really nice. In the new community space, we'll be having hosts that'll come and be present so that folks can come in at the hours that they would like to come in and use the space. And so we'll coordinate that. All of that is organized through our community itself. So folks tell us what they need, and then we try to apply that rather than saying, oh, this is what we top down are going to do. And so I think that is really important, because oftentimes what you think the needs are really not what the needs are. And so really just opening up dialogue and saying, like, when and how is this a need? And really this computer lab came about because we were hearing from folks that they needed access to technology. And what's really clear is more and more, there are very few jobs anymore that even people can apply for without technology. And so, you know, being able to offer that. We also have groups that are working on creating their own businesses. And so more and more, they're going to need technology to be able to do that work. And so it made perfect sense. You know, half of our job at Beloved is just giving people the tools and resources that they need to do the work that they want to do in the community. And that's the number one thing that we see, is that folks that get pushed to the streets and margins typically have the know-how, and they typically want to, but they don't have the access sometimes to the resources and technology that they need to do the work that they want to do.
Just to build on that, I mean, one thing I think is really important, I mean, I love hearing Amy talk about how those computers are being used. And if you'd come to me and asked, like, what's the need? What does the homeless community need? Why, you know, what do they use those computers for? I probably would have come up with precisely 0 of those needs. And I think, you know, we tend to think very narrowly because we've decided that a certain part of our community is defined by one characteristic, and we kind of forget that they are full 3-dimensional human beings, and they know what they need, that we need to be listening to that. And that's one point. I think not that there haven't been and aren't challenges with doing this, but critical piece of this is that, you know, the project that the Brigade is doing is embedded in an existing resource in an existing community. We're not trying to set up something on the side. I mean, there would be no way we could even consider something like that. And then just kind of in terms of how we actually maintain this going forward, I think for the last, you know, since it launched about a year ago, Jim March, who's one of the current co-captains, and Sabrina Raven, who's the other right now. I don't know if you both showed up, you know, every week or alternated or what, but somebody is showing up roughly once a week to go through, deal with any problems, fix any issues, but also have been in the process of teaching people in the community how to actually do that themselves. And the idea is eventually this gets completely handed off. And we can be on call for harder problems, but don't need to do that regular maintenance.
And one of my dreams is that we raise up our own Geek Squad, so that that might be a business that folks are engaged in, because they are able to take these donated computers and learn on them and take them apart and really skill up if they want to. And just, I want to piggyback on what Eric said. We have a guy on the street, and he is a computer programmer. He's very well versed of how he wants to use technology. And he's like, I don't need training, I need tools. And in fact, I remember getting a letter in the mailbox because we had gotten him a laptop, and the laptop had crashed. And he said, I'm not myself because I don't have my tools. For him, it's a vocation and a part of his personhood to be able to have access to this. And we were able to reach out through Code for Asheville and get him a laptop so that he could use that and continue the work that he feels led to do in the world. And so I think people would be surprised about how important technology really is to folks on the streets and how vital it is for so many folks in so many different capacities.
Great. Thank you so much, Amy and Eric. Any further questions, if we could please put them in the chat, and we will continue on to our next presenters. So thanks so much. Rohan, I have you up next from Open Austin, and Brittany.
Cool, thanks. Let me share my screen. Can you guys see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So my name is Rohan, and together with Brittany Lyons, we're working on a project called Austin Affordable Housing as part of the Code for America Fellowship. And the problem, probably most of you know, is that for cities like Austin, other cities like Seattle and San Francisco, gentrification is getting worse, and vulnerable populations are being displaced because of the increase in population and the corresponding increase in home prices. There are a lot of minority groups and vulnerable populations that are getting pushed out of the center of the city. And in general, this is a particularly bad thing because a lot of the amenities that we have, at least in Austin, are based around the city center. So that means hospitals, that means schools, that means jobs that a lot of these vulnerable populations usually have. It becomes harder to access these things as the population increases and people kind of get pushed out. And just a little bit about kind of like our story. So the way that I came across this problem is I started going to city council meetings, and it seemed like every city council meeting, affordable housing would come up as a core issue. And like I was saying before, I think that it's something that's very visible to people. It's very easy to internalize, and it is so fundamental because so many of our other amenities and services that we have, whether it be private or public services, are connected to where you live. So our team right now is myself, Brittany Lyons, has been working kind of on the design of what we're trying to do. And we have two great government partners in Catherine and Josh, who work in two different government agencies in Austin, helping to solve the affordable housing problem. So our first step, this is kind of 6 months before we applied for the fellowship, is we came up with a couple prototypes for kind of what we imagined would be helpful. The first was kind of this analytics dashboard. We're at a hackathon, and we're talking about kind of issues with affordable housing, and Austin is nice enough to have an open data portal, so we're able to consume that data, do a few analytics, kind of understand what the spread of affordable housing looks like in Austin. And then our next step after that was to create a more kind of user-centered prototype for people that would be looking. So, we knew that one of the issues is that Austin was kind of looking for kind of technology to help provide a solution that would allow people to access affordable housing easier. We wrote a Medium article, and we got contacted by some folks at the government, and that's kind of what started our relationship. And with the government partners, we came to the conclusion that there's basically two things that the government can do along with Open Austin to solve the problem. One is to deliver available affordable housing resources to those who need it. So that means that there is available affordable housing inventory, but it's not getting to everyone because there's a matching problem. And number two is just creating more affordable housing, so increasing the total volume of affordable housing that Austin has. And there's two main ways that the government has two main instruments they can use to achieve that. For HACA, which is one of the agencies, it's vouchers. So a vulnerable citizen might get a voucher, and that would cut the cost by 30 to 50% of any market rate unit. And the other instrument is density bonus program, which is a subsidy that allows private developers to create more housing as long as they set aside a certain number of units for at affordable prices. So dialing in, we're really focused on number one right now, and this is delivering the available affordable housing resources to those who need it. In particular, there are two problems related to this. So one is that there's a lack of information about what affordable housing is available right now. And that's because there are lots of different silos in which this inventory is. So like I mentioned before, there are two government agencies, there's multiple nonprofits in Austin that deal with affordable housing, and everyone kind of has their own data sets. There's no kind of one central place that someone would go to try to get this information and get a list of possibilities. And two is the user experience. So kind of talking with people familiar with a problem, case managers and people looking, oftentimes they just get like a pamphlet, a sheets of paper with just kind of listings of housings and phone numbers to call. And it's kind of up to them to spend hours and hours just calling numbers and see if there's availability. That's a bad user experience. And our theory is that that's a big blocker in terms of someone getting connected with the affordable housing that they need. So in terms of the solutions that we're starting to work on and thinking about for the future, the first one is to improve the quality of the data, and that's what we're working on right now. And that means creating an affordable housing data hub, which will be an API. And the idea is to kind of work with the various government partners in Austin, work with the different nonprofits, anyone who has affordable housing inventory, and create pipelines that aggregate all that data together in one place. And I think that'll achieve, can achieve 60–70% of the problem, just because a user then doesn't have to go to multiple places to get that data. The second component of that is to find a way to make that data real time, right? So we might have data about possible properties, but that doesn't mean that the properties are actually available right now. And so we have some creative solutions around that. One's kind of like an automated robot calling. So the idea is that it would call the property managers, they'd input the data into their phone. So in terms of how many units they have and whether or not they have those units available. And in real time, that data would update the application that a user would use. Just trying to get to the most available data, most real-time data as possible. The second component is to improve access to the data, and that's the user experience that we're talking about. And we kind of started to prototype that in the screens that I showed earlier by creating an experience that's tailored to someone looking for affordable housing. Oftentimes it's really confusing. There are multiple places. There are also different instruments or different programs that a user is part of, and they need a match with the affordable housing that's available. So a user might be funded or by the NHCD, or a user might have a voucher, and there's kind of different pathways and experiences that they need to have and steps that they need to take before they can actually access the applications and the affordable housing that they're looking for. So just creating that kind of custom user experience, I think, is going to be a second important step. And then finally, I mentioned number two way back at the beginning, and that was the idea that we want to increase the volume of affordable housing that Austin has to offer. Austin is like in the top 5 in most gentrified cities in the US right now, And I think that all this data, improving the quality of the data, improving the access to the data, will allow the government to make better investment decisions when it comes to increasing the volume of affordable housing moving forward. Just because we'll have better demographic data around who the people are that are searching affordable housing and what exactly they're looking for and where. And I think that once the government has that data, they'll be able to use it more effectively to make better decisions around that. Finally, the kind of North Star metric that we're going to be using for this project is the turnback rate. So this is the percent of people who return a HACA voucher. That's one of the agencies in Austin that provides vouchers for affordable housing. So right now that is at 15%. That means that these vulnerable populations are given vouchers, but that should be applicable to almost any market rate unit. But even then, 15% of those vouchers are returned every month because they're not able to find properties that accept them, or they're just not able to navigate the experience of using that voucher and the applications and finding the data and finding that right match. So hopefully as this project continues, that number will continue to drop. And that's definitely one of the main ways that we'll be evaluating the success of this project. So that's pretty much all I have. Definitely open to questions, and would love to hear also if other brigades have heard of other projects and other ways that this problem has been tackled in other cities. So, thanks.
I have a question. One of the problems that we've faced is that, as you say, clients are given this long list of places to call. And even after they've sorted through that to find which places are technically have vacancies, most of them are still inaccessible because of gatekeeping criteria like income minimums or credit ratings, or the landlord doesn't want to take a housing voucher. So have you done anything around helping people sort through those barriers? Do you have anything planned?
Yeah, I think that part of the idea is going to be to allow the user to input all that information up front in the application. So instead of just getting like a list, even if you go online on the application, we don't just want to provide them a list of properties on a map. We want to ask them, tell us about your life. Like, what is your income range? What is your credit history, right? And only show them properties and only give them contact information for the properties that match their criteria. Because I think you're right. A lot of what we've heard is that even if there's available properties, it's often the case that they'll go through this whole process and ultimately it's not actually a fit. So we're going to do as much as possible to make sure that there is a fit for people looking.
That's great.
Just a quick
Yeah, I have a
question.
question. Oh, sorry.
Just one question for the fellowship. Kind of what's the target outcome for the fellowship part of the work?
So as far as I understand it, from the perspective of Code for America, I think that they focus on systems level change. So the government partners that we're working on, what's somewhat surprising to me is that they don't always have metrics and processes around kind of solving this problem. So even if, my hope is that the technology will actually be at a state at which it can be used, whether it's just the API that we're going to allow other people to consume the data from, or if it's the actual application that users will be using. I'm hoping that by the end of the project, it'll be sustainable, it'll be maintainable, and it'll either be something that we can hand off to the government tech people, or it's something that someone else can maintain, maybe the brigade, right? But even if we don't get to that point, just going through the process of thinking in a user-centered design type of way and imparting that to the government partners would be a win.
I have a question. Do you have like money, resources to carry this through? And if so, how much, and what were the sources?
So this started just as a hobby project. At first, it started a hackathon, but the main funding source is going to be through the fellowship. the Code for America Fellowship. So part of the part of the process is that the government partners get together with Code for America, who get together with the fellows and kind of decide on a budget over a 6-month span. And that'll kind of go towards the resources in terms of time, in terms of technology, in terms of computing resources. So that's kind of still kind of in flux. We're still kind of ironing out exactly what the amounts are going to be there. But we're just, for our particular use case, it should be enough to cover 6 months of work for me and my co-fellow.
Okay. Have you gotten any money from the city of Austin?
Not yet, but the plan again is that hopefully this conversation about funding is going to include both the government partners and Code for America.
Okay.
And so far the conversations have gone well, and that's kind of how the fellowship is structured at the moment.
I had more of a comment. You had mentioned about what some other brigades are doing. I just wanted to give a shout out. I don't know if anyone from Code for DC is here, but they had a really awesome presentation during Brigade Day at Summit about the work that they're doing with housing. And I wouldn't be able to describe it in as much detail as they would, but they were basically able to work with something with the process where they included a point of data collection where they were actually able to get longitudinal data on and more accurate housing data on how much prices are rising, specifically in what neighborhoods for what units and by how much. And then also, if I remember correctly, a part of their project was also connecting the prospective tenant with past information about the unit and about like their landlord and other like legal requirements and such. But yeah, I wish someone from Code for DC was here to explain that.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. We're actually looking, because that was part of another coalition project, to have a presentation about that as well. But thanks for providing that insight. Cool. Well, if anyone has any more questions for Rohan and Brittany, please put them into the chat, and we're going to go on with our next presentation, and that's going to be Code for Boulder. So Mike, I'll let you take it away, and if anyone else from the team needs to be promoted to co-host, just let me know.
Thank you. Let me get to the screen here. Can you see that?
No, we can't.
Okay, hang on one sec here. Sorry, folks. Doesn't look like it let me in here. I lost your screen. About now?
No.
No. I lost all your pictures. I don't know where it went. Let me see here. Oh, I found you. Okay.
There we go. That showed something. It was a white screen, but it was screen sharing. Perfect. We can see your desktop.
Okay. Well, let me get over to my. Better? Can everybody
Yep,
see?
that's perfect.
Sorry about that. So my name's Mike Homner, and I'm with Code for Boulder. I want to give you a little background about me, and that will probably play into, well, I know it will play into what we're doing. I was in sales for many years, and I became homeless for 5 years. And I came up with an idea for an app for homeless people. And we used to get things actually given to us on a piece of paper. And I don't know if you can realize how inadequate that was. You would take that and you would stick it in your backpack, and it was either lost or it would get wet. Things would change, and it was just, the information just wasn't there. So I stumbled in and found Code for Boulder, threw this idea out to them, and we've been going gangbusters with it ever since. We're looking to make a digital directory, and we're looking for accurate information. And what we did is we went and got information from what we call MDHI, Metro Denver Homeless Initiative, which is a part of HUD, and we were able to access HUD's database. And the database gives us a good foundation, but what we want to do is actually update that foundation and make it more accurate for people that are at risk, or even due to be at risk, that might be housed and might lose their housing. We want the information actually at their fingertips so they can get to some source of help when they need it. So what we did is we went out and we actually talked to quite a few people on the street. I also had a lot of input into it because I understood from street level, and I also was on a board of a nonprofit that was for the homeless here in Boulder. So I have a unique view from not only being on the street level, but also from a provider level. And what we went out and we didn't tell people we were building this app. We just asked them what a day in their life was and their challenges that they had. And we found that not only were my ideas there, but we found out a few more. And we decided at that point that we categorize these things and try to give a full service app of all the services that are here. Ones that are mainstream, such as regular shelters, meals, transportation, and also niche nonprofits that help homeless pregnant women, the Safe House, things like that. So we tried to bring everything together. And we're the people who we are serving are not only the end users, but we're also trying to serve the nonprofits as a stakeholder, because their services would be more effective than what they would be out in the wild on their own. You know, a mother or a pregnant lady trying to find services would have to go into different agencies for them to be brought into the system. Also, too, part of the system that's we are starting to do here, and it is taking off around the rest of the country, is it's called the Coordinated Entry System, and it's part of the HUD initiative, get people into the system and find the resources for them. So I was listening to Amy there about people having cell phones. We looked around and we did a bunch of studying, and we came up with this one study here, and 94% of people have cell phones. And like she was saying, they have access to the internet Here in Boulder, we're lucky because the internet, we have a few libraries, and we also have parts of the city. Our pedestrian mall has free Wi-Fi on it. Anywhere around any of the public buildings, there's free Wi-Fi. So we felt that this was an opportunity to take advantage of. So we do have an MVP that's actually working, but it's not out in the wild yet. We really want to make sure that it's solid before we release it. So you can go to upswing.org, or you can click on this how to use the video. We actually have a video that goes through it and shows you how to use it. I figured it was going to be way more than 5 minutes, so that's why I didn't put it in here. But the key thing is getting people to use the app. People are afraid of the government, as Amy was saying, and we want to make sure that when this app is released, we want to make sure they know that there's no personal data that's going to be actually captured. Because if we do that, the trust will be broken, and if you don't have that trust, you're not going to have users. So we also wanted to make it lightweight using an Ionic framework, and we also wanted to make it a location-based product. So not only would it be the Boulder, but also exactly where you're at. And the other key thing is we want to make it easy to use, as all apps want to. They want to make it intuitive. But we have a different subset of people. People sometimes are drunk, they're high, they're actually tripping. We want to be able to make sure that they're able to click on what they need in that time when they need it. So we've given you a few frames from what we've learned out there. And I want to zone in on the homepage. First thing we ask is, what can we help you with today? We want to talk to them as human beings. And we found that, they're talked down to so much that when you start a conversation, you find a real person there. And we want to do that with this app. I want you to also look down on the second row on the right, restrooms. We looked around at other apps, and there are a few out there, but nobody has restrooms on there. And that is one of the critical points. People that are on the street, they need to use a restroom, whether you're housed or not, you have to use one. So we want to make sure that we can show all the public buildings and all the public restrooms in our area. The second screen is basically when we go through, we actually filter down into the audience, as we're calling it, whether they're adults or family or youth, or even for pets, because there's a pretty good percentage of people with pets out on the street. And the next one, you're going to see what we're trying to do on the food listings, or any of the listings. Short hours, phone numbers. You also see the audience follows with that, logos, and then the other thing is the kudos, a thumbs up. If you like that particular provider, we want people to know that, hey, we have X amount of people that like that provider. Also, we'll give a full ranging map so you can see where the services are. And then when you drill down into the provider services, you'll be able to see key information from them. The second one would be an actual map, and that's where the location bit comes in. You'll be able to see exactly where you're at, what bus lines you have to take to get to that provider, or walking directions if you're within that. And then we have something that's very unique. The bottom, it's called Hot Tips. And these are tips that about that particular provider. Our shelter here requires you to get a TB test within the first 2 weeks of staying there. Things like this that you would know to make your entry into the the system or that provider easier. You'll notice in the top left, we have the heart, so you can, that would be one of your favorites. And on the right side, we have an integration with the calendar. And as you see the calendar screen over here, a lot of times we found that structure in a homeless person's life is not there. They're left with many hours of free time, and then all of a sudden, everything comes at once: the meal time, the shelter to get in, or whatever it may be. But this would tie into Google Calendar also. So doctor's appointments or even a court date would be able to be put in and notifications sent to that person. What are our next steps for that? For Upswing, we're looking for to be able to make it Spanish language. That's our number one. Our hot tips to be, spot on. Integration of that Google Calendar. We'd like to not only take this from a Boulder standpoint, but we'd like to make it, sorry, I got a phone. Okay. As you can see, I'm technology challenged. Okay. So we'd like to see it move from not only Boulder, but then move it out to different brigades to give you a project to steward in your own location. We're figuring 12 months for deployment. We have applied for a few grants, and if we are successful in those grants, we might be able to get that done sooner. What we have and what we need front-end developers, we need data validators and city ambassadors. And what we mean by city ambassador, we usually find somebody that's a volunteer in the homeless community that can send out information and be able to make sure that information is correct. Also, the providers will have their own screen to be able to go in and make changes there. And again, we need you folks. We have some contact information. My email's up there. Varun is our project manager. Brandon, who had to jump off of our call today, is our captain of our squad here. One of the last things I want to bring up is we have worked with the Boulder County here, not only in a data set, but also we've gone to a local judge through the judicial branch and to see what we can do with them to help out. And we're also sponsored by Purdue University. I had a chance meeting with somebody from Purdue, and it's wound up to be, they are going to actually give us a class that will work with us for at least a semester, if not a full year, with undergrad seniors to help us program and design. So with that, does anybody have any questions?
Hey, Mike, thank you so much. I'm hoping that we can put the questions into the chat just because we do have one more presentation and we're coming up on our time limit. But that was great. Thank you so much. And if anyone has any questions, please direct those into the chat so that Mike can answer them. Okay, perfect. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Matt from Code for Boston. And I know we're running up on our time limit, but if you are able to stay through his whole presentation, that would be really wonderful. And I'll let you take it away, Matt.
Awesome. All right. Can everyone hear me? I was just making sure my microphone was on, and also I am going to attempt to share my screen. So I will click continue, and I believe if I just click desktop 1, that should get it out there. So for those that don't know me, my name's Matt. I'm attempting to play a keynote so folks can see the couple of slides I made about this thing. So does everyone see the screen share?
Yes, we do.
Cool. Legal Housing is a project that came to us sort of both from the city of Boston and some folks from Suffolk Law School. They're working with the housing enforcement group at the city of Boston. And the problem as it was posed to us, we have, I found a screenshot of the whiteboard. One of the nice things about Slack is I was able to go back to the beginning of the project and kind of see sort of our problem statements and what we were thinking about at the beginning. And the thing that we were trying to figure out was really how might we identify discriminatory housing listings. And so the problem is that there are these laws about whether or not you can post certain requirements for a tenant for a housing listing. And one of the things we learned, so you'll see one of the bullet points is not roommate postings. So there's laws that apply to folks trying to get a tenant for an apartment that they have, but it is not the same as a roommate posting. You're actually allowed to be more discriminatory in a roommate posting due to a Supreme Court ruling. And so we sort of honed in on this idea of the city of Boston wanting to both identify and notify bad actors. And so I think the case that we kind of canonically thought about in the discriminatory housing space was an issue involving a lot of listings will say no families. And so the reason they'll say no families is that the property owner has not remediated the property for lead and knows that the property has lead, and therefore the property is not appropriate for children. And so while the city of Boston is able to engage in sort of a civil enforcement action, they think that it would be more productive to be able to reach out to folks, give them information on things like lead remediation programs, and then that way folks can potentially access those programs and the incentives around them, and then go ahead and get that remediated, and then they no longer have to post that they maybe don't want kids, which is definitely against the law. So anyways, a little bit of project history. Project began in December 2016. That's when sort of that whiteboard was from. February 2018, software development portion of the project was completed by Code for Boston. And over the life cycle of this project, we've had over 21 contributors, both through code and also through some design, some problem statements, and that sort of thing. And throughout the project, we sort of began with a tech stack, and there are two components to the application, or I guess three. So the first is a user interface for the section that folks would go through and actually review the housing listings and whether or not they've been marked as discriminatory by the application. Python for going out and scraping sources of housing listings out there in the world. There's some interesting questions about whether or not certain sources might or might not be permissible to scrape. But folks did sort of a bunch of work around being able to do actual scraping of sources. And then we've sort of left it up to the city to sort out which ones are correct to target, or which ones are able to target. The front end, they did it in some JavaScript in D3. And just wanted to note that as we were working through the project as a group, we learned that one dead end was trying to apply machine learning and artificial intelligence to this thing. It's not because I don't think it's like ever impossible to apply machine learning to a problem like this. But we learned as we were going through the challenges is that when we looked at machine learning as an option, there just simply wasn't enough labeled data to sort of have enough examples of discriminatory listing to train a model and then be able to go through a lot of listings. And so because of the lack of labeled data, we decided to stick with using sort of regular parsing through regular expressions. And I think another thing that's worth thinking about is this wasn't only a tech problem, it's also sort of a legal problem as well. And so I'm, in addition to being a software developer, I'm an attorney, and we worked with the folks at Suffolk, was a law professor and a couple folks there. And so they had some legal background, and we were able to get insight on the kinds of listings that are discriminatory and some links to places that suggested language and words that we might look out for in sort of parsing and marking our data, and so that we can see if it is or isn't discriminatory. So I think that folks want to have some information on logistics, and so we had no fundraising. But project partner, City of Boston, is planning to deploy and use it, so it's going to exist on their servers. As far as the user of the application, the users are going to be City of Boston employees in the Department of Innovation and Technology. So it's other technologists working with the folks in housing enforcement on the graphical user interface side. And I'd just like to note that we view this in our tool of tools that we call the tools that help the helpers. And so as we've gone through and kind of thought about intaking projects, we really like projects that help the helpers because rather than having to take a project and market it out to a large public user base, which takes lots of effort, we're able to work with folks inside a nonprofit or inside a government entity and have like maybe 5 or 15 users that are we can get feedback from and work with and improve things. And insofar as next steps, we circled back with the City of Boston, and they're currently, they've been going through some turnover, so they haven't been able to actually push this into production yet. And so they haven't used it in like a first round, but we will likely sort of wait for them to deploy and do a test run. And then after that, go ahead and potentially make some improvements. And so that is the slideshow. And I just wanted to also show sort of the basic interface. So we made it was sort of a bootstrap with a little logo here. And then what we have is we have an interface. I tried to load in our sort of sample listings and failed at it before the presentation. But what you can see is that you can go ahead and click discriminatory listings and then see the sorts of options that would, or different kinds of discrimination or discriminatory terms that might appear in a listing. So then if you like picked one and you said, I don't know, like white neighborhood, you could click filter and then it would filter the listings by that, so you could drill down. And then we made some options so folks could go through and see based on this different visualization, which sadly you cannot see without the sample listings loaded, of the sorts of different discriminatory listings that might appear. So this will give the folks in the city a dashboard view of the listings, and then there's a visualization and some stats around different date ranges, and so they could try and take a look at different kinds of discrimination that would happen. The processing of the data and the labeling of it all just happens in background tasks. So that part actually doesn't require user intervention. The technologists can just kind of set it up and run, and then the folks can go ahead and take a look at the data and process it. And then from there, sort of the next step is either grabbing the email addresses through another script, or potentially adding a feature so that as they sort of decide what that content might be, that they could automatically send that targeted content to folks that make the certain kind of post. So that was kind of my quick version of that. And so I am willing to go ahead and answer questions at this point.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Matt. That was really a great presentation. I think just for interest of time, it would be best if you don't mind putting your email address or your Slack handle in the chat here, so folks can follow up with you outside of the workshop. I think that would be the best way to move forward. And this has been, thanks. Yeah, perfect. And this has been such a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much to all of the folks who presented, and to everybody for being part of this call. I think some really amazing work was shown, and hopefully we were able to knowledge share a little bit about different projects. So just email us if you have any questions, and we look forward to seeing you soon. All right. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.